Okay, round two.
They want to open up a gateway to hell, and even Stephen Hawking said that.
He said 3 of those soldiers did come back totally possessed of some kind of evil entity.
Yeah, but that guy.
The body of Nimrod they discovered too was about.
I think Bas might be correct that the solar flare's making it do that.
7 foot tall, and said that he had multiple rows of teeth, just like what they talk about the.
Nephilim.
Yes, yeah, exactly. He said he was definitely a Nephilim, descendant of Nephilim, and he was like the Kandahar giant that we hear, like L.A. Marzulli talk about, things like that.
Yeah.
And he said that. He said initially, we brought him back. We put that body underneath the airport in Colorado. And the last that he had heard is that the Israelis had overtaken the project, and they're trying to put a demonic soul, back into that body and resurrect it. As crazy as that might sound, that was the last I heard on that. Have you ever heard any of that kind of stuff?
Here's where it's at. It's at CERN, where the CERN collider is.
Okay.
That's where they're going to get the demonic entity to put in.
I was told that, Brother Greg. I was told that they had actually, when CERN had opened up one of the dimensional portals, that there was a demon that was communicating with them, and that demon was saying that he was the spirit of Nimrod, and they're trying to figure out how to get his spirit into that body. And speaking of aliens, I know why you get me so inspired just talking to you, Brother Greg. So a friend of mine, and I'll just say who it is, Harold Villa. I know Harold. I lived in Europe, interviewed Harold many times. He was invited to work on the CERN project as a scientist. And he said they wanted him so bad to work on that project that they actually introduced him to aliens. And he said he knew immediately they were demonic entities. He said that he wouldn't have anything to do with it from that point forward. Yeah, share some things that you know about CERN. I'd really be curious about that.
Well, the CERN. Well, let me tell you what the original collider was built for. The one we had in the '60s.
I remember you telling me one time, but go back and let's do it again.
Originally, the collider was built to collide 2 atomic particles together, just one particle, so that the explosion from that one particle could determine the yield of an atomic bomb. That's what it was for, so they could determine the yield without exploding one.
Okay.
So they would mathematically take the energy that came off of those two particles that hit, and then they found out that sometimes it opens the door quick. Well, quick's not fast enough with demons. They're interdimensional. That door's open to crack, millions of them can come through. And so CERN wants to open up the gate. They want to open up a gateway to hell, and even Stephen Hawking said that. He was an atheist. He said that they would not be happy with what comes through them.
Diane, I posted that on Facebook to the Muslims I debate with, the ones that let you post a link. I posted that MP dropping and dying.
There, because it wouldn't be good.
That is so true.
Yeah, and he was an atheist. So the CERN collider is 27 kilometers in diameter. Now they're building a bigger one. They put extensions on the CERN collider, and when they hit it, when the atomic bomb, I think the atomic bomb started a lot of the demonic activity in the earth. Opened up the gate because
I'm pretty sure it was the tall Nords that gave us the atomic bomb. I'm pretty sure it was them.
It gets over 100, 200, 300 million degrees for 600 billionths of a second to ignite to make the hydrogen fuse. So that's what CERN's doing. They're doing that on a small scale and getting the same results as if they exploded a big one.
Rather,
And when you look at them on the screen, they look like little tiny white dots. That's all you see, those entities, those little tiny white dots on the screen that they look at.
wow.
Those are the entities.
You know, I want to ask you if you're familiar with this, Brother Greg. I was told that when we were in Iraq, one of the things that they had discovered out of Saddam Hussein's treasure troves was the way it was put. So it was kind of like not so much a Ouija board, but it's kind of like this dial type of object. They said they brought it back, and the different scientists were trying to figure out what was this thing for, how did it work. They spent months and months trying to figure it out, and then they realized what it was that it was like almost like a telephone, but you set these dials a certain way, right? And
it's a golden phone that has no seams on it, and the way it came on is they couldn't get it on. They were testing and trying to get it to come on, and the building next door to them was a radio place where they built radios, and a low-level radio signal came through and turned it on.
And what did it do?
I'll be doggone. Well, I heard about that, and then what I was told that they were trying to make the decision because it was like an incoming call, whether or not to answer it or not. Finally, they got permission to answer. They said when they did, it opened like a vortex or something, and this worm-like creature, about 6 foot long, came through and began to killing the people in the room.
No way!
I didn't know if you've ever heard about that one or not.
No, I heard what they seen was on the phone. It lit up like our cell phones do, where you could see pictures and stuff.
Yes.
And there was a story, there was pictures of cars and everything that were levitating. And there was a guy on there talking about that Adam and Eve was their grandfather and grandmother. And that they were sick and tired. They were sick and tired of going back to the laws of Adam and Eve, what they were trying to tell them. And so they decided to pull away. And one thing that really sticks with me is the boy goes, we noticed when we were flying that our flying altitude was getting lower and lower, and the foliage was starting to turn brown.
Wow. And that, Brother Greg, that brings me to a subject I've heard you talk about in other videos on. I've heard a little bit about this from the source that I have in DC, that, like, for example, the Smithsonian underground, they have many things that they'll never make known to the public. But I've heard that we know of for a fact, we've had 5 advanced civilizations. Now, it's a little bit hard for Christians to hear this, but they say going back 9,000 years, they said the last advanced civilization was 500 years before Jesus came to the earth, and that the civilizations were more advanced than what we are today. We are actually considered the stupidest generation for advancement thus far. But you've talked a lot about some of the technology that was, like you were just mentioning back then. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah. They were more advanced than us, but you remember what Jesus said? This won't pass until the end of the age.
Yes.
This is our 3rd Earth age. We've been through 3 Earth ages. The Earth really is millions of years old. Back in the dinosaurs and all this and that was millions of years ago, and that was an age. The Earth ended, and that was the end of that age. And then came the 2nd age, and God destroyed it with the flood. Now we're in the...
Okay, I completely disagree with him here. They found Tyrannosaurus Rex bones with wet tissue in it, still wet blood in it. So if they're millions of years old, how's it got wet tissue in it?
3rd Earth age. And I learned that from Chuck Missler.
I like Chuck. I actually did an interview with Chuck years ago.
I miss him, don't you?
Yes. He's a brilliant man. Very.
Diane, that's saying the Bible's a liar. That's what that's saying. Remember, you've seen that guy, the 25 proves the Earth is only 6,000 years old. So we know it's true, and he's so wrong.
Brilliant.
He was the first one I ever heard talk about 11 dimensions.
Well, you know, speaking of 11 dimensions, one of the things that was shared with me is that we had, of course, more than one Hadron Collider. They just don't tell you. I've heard that there's even one in Antarctica. Now, whether or not we built it or not is a different story. But they said that we have discovered 7 dimensions with the Hadron Collider so far. In 3 of those dimensions, they're Earth-like, very similar to ours. But they say they're operating in a different time period than what we are. It's almost like a parallel universe, different time periods. And that, what else have I heard about these types? I mean, it's just really bizarre stuff that you hear. And I'm curious to know if you've heard of those type things before.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Antarctica. The Palladians live there. And the Palladians, you know, they look white and human and this and that, but they're demons as well. And it stinks there like sulfur. And they do have a collider there. And I think that's how they come in and out of dimension. But we haven't learned how to even pull something out of dimension yet, let alone go in and out. So yeah, they're much more advanced than
Hey, Ryan, good to see you.
And there are more than one collider. China's building a big one. They're going to build one bigger than CERN. And they're opening up the doorway to hell with what they're doing. They're the ones that are going to bring on the wrath of the tribulation. There's these colliders. I really believe that.
I can see that, Brother Greg, especially in light, you know, when the scripture talks about the kings of the east, you know, we see these scriptures, you know, the Euphrates is dried up.
The kings of the east came from China,
etc. To me, that's more metaphoric, and you know, the way the kings of the east is opened, and I don't look at that as a good thing at all. And you know, all these, what is it, however many thousands of horsemen that come up out of this, you know, for example, you know, the bottomless pit, things like that. One thing that I heard was that when Atlantis was a striving civilization, I was told that we actually have the records, they're classified, we have records that Atlantis was taken down because these entities they taught them how to build a Hadron Collider, oddly enough, and they convinced the Atlanteans to use it, and they ended up opening up a portal which sunk the city of Atlantis as a result of that. And you know, and so you hear about all these strange stories. But one thing, Brother Greg, I want to ask you about this. I have been told over and over and over that Planet X is traveling in the ether, and that's one of the reasons why it's not as easily detected. It kind of goes in and out of our dimension and another dimension.
I've heard that.
And so I asked the question not long ago. I said, if it's traveling in the ether, is it that they know when this system comes through, it's affecting our planets in our solar system, but is it a situation where the demons know that the time frame is supposed to be passing, and that they will end up using CERN to open up that portal that allows that system to enter into our system, and then that's when all this calamity really begins to happen.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, that's true. And what we're doing right now, your global warming stuff, we're terraforming the Earth with these chemtrails and stuff.
Yes.
We're terraforming it so that the climate suits the demons.
Oh my gosh. I heard that exact same thing, Brother Greg. Exact same thing. They said, why do you think that these entities love the desert? You know, they always love to be in the desert. They like these hot, arid places, no trees, no nothing. They said because that's the kind of climate they want. And that's what I was told. They were terraforming the earth in order to suit their needs, not ours. So can you share too, Brother Greg? I know there's a lot of questions about depopulation on the earth. Is that anything that ever come up in any of the times, the work that you did amongst people?
Well, yeah, amongst the Freemasons, rule the Illuminati thinks they can rule the planet by 500,000, but that'll leave the demons with nothing to eat and the giants. So you can't do that.
So they're not going to let that happen then.
No, I don't think so. It's just speculation on my part. That's all it is. Don't take my word for it. Speculation. But they are, they did want to depopulate the earth. That's why they were.
And Diane, did you see Tesla recalled 2 million cars? They record 2 million electric cars.
So mad about abortion being abolished, they want to depopulate the earth. And I heard, that babies are mixed in food now.
Oh, it's terrible.
I just don't know how God can forgive us sometimes. I just don't know. And I'm sure that they did that really even back in Jesus' day when Herod wanted everybody killed, 2 years and younger. That's the same thing. So it's nothing new. It's just that we're really exploiting it on its highest level here in the United States. And
yes. It's always an attack.
You emotional. Okay, Di, that makes sense.
Right, and it's always, it seems to be an attack on the children in every age. Like you said, during the time of Moses, they went after the children. The times of Jesus, they went after the children. And in modern days, they're doing the exact same thing. It reminds me, the scripture says that time would come where they would take no thought for the child that is in the womb. I tell you, Brother Greg, can other than the reptilians, the Palladians, have you ever seen other types, whether it be the mantis? I hear the mantis are supposed to be some of the most intelligent as far as IQ wise of all the entities that there is.
And I've seen the mantis. I haven't seen them all, I'm telling you that now. But I've seen the mantis, the greys, the reptilians, and a couple others. I don't even know what you call them. They're just horrendous looking. And they smell so bad. Down in Area 51, I don't know. Who is it, your uncle that worked there or your dad?
My stepdad worked at Area 51. He was,
okay.
When you mentioned earlier about the aircraft, where they would test some of the latest aircraft, that was the one thing that he knew about, that he did share with me, is that, like, for example, I think when we had the Blackbird, I always thought, I was so impressed about that aircraft back in the 70s, and he would say to me, he said, son, he said, that is such old technology, it's not even funny. He says, we had that long years ago. He said, they're just now showing it to the public. He said, that's the way it is.
I seen the new B-2021. I had a friend, I think you can pull it online now, but the new B-21, and it looks just like an alien space.
And that is so crazy. And
and it's so perfect. It has no seams on it. It's smooth. It's perfect. It's actually a beautiful aircraft, because I was an aircraft mechanic, and I got a fondness for flying machines. I like them. But this plane here was so smooth. There was no seams. And the only thing that I ever seen with no seams was an interdimensional craft. They didn't have seams.
Is there any reason that you might know of as to why they have to be seamless for being interdimensional?
Yeah, so they can move that quick. Let me tell you what, if you went, now, I read that Navy report, it's declassified now. One of the naval guys clocked it going 72,000 miles an hour.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
So if you had a rivet or a seam, it's going to peel back. So you can't have that. And with the energy sources they use Bob Lazar talks about, that they took one apart at Area 51 and exploded in a big place, and the earth sunk down like they detonated a nuclear bomb underneath.
Wow.
It just boom. So, they got, when they crash, I don't know what they do about that. I don't know. I know that they've got retrieval teams, and that lieutenant in the Navy that was in Congress with disclosure said that they have retrieval teams.
Right. Right.
That know how to clean it up. So, you know, they can't get everything. If you went out to Roswell with a metal detector, I'm sure you could find a speck or two or something. You can't clean it off. It's just like nuclear weapons when they explode, they can't clean up all the mess. You just can't. You die. And those things are so radioactive that if they're under there, when you come out, when you had to be by one, they check you with a Geiger counter when you come out. So,
Brother Greg, what do you know about? I know we have a spacecraft. I say a spacecraft. I've heard it's similar to like what a space station would look like as far as that, but it's very long. It is used back and forth in our solar system. That travels back and forth. I believe you actually said to Saturn. What do you know about that particular craft?
About which name of it?
I was actually told they call it the Enterprise, but it's actually like a kilometer-long spacecraft that we use to travel back and forth. That was built by cooperation between Russia and the United States.
Yeah. What I think they're doing is they're going to Saturn, and not going to Saturn because you can't get in there, but they're watching the poles on Saturn because that's the abyss where the demons are.
I was told that is a reptilian safe haven. So it's interesting that you say that.
On the top and the bottom, and it's got a swirling pool in it. And that's what CERN hopes to do is be able to produce a beam that can carry an entity back from pointing it at Saturn, North and South Pole.
Wow.
Now, whether that'll happen, you know, that's just what you know Anthony Patches, don't you?
Yes, I do know Anthony.
He knows more about Sternfly than anybody I've ever met in my life. That guy, you know, he went to school at Berkeley.
Right, he's brilliant. He really is.
He's brilliant. As a matter of fact, when you listen to him, it's almost boring because I can't understand anything about quantum physics like he does. He's a genius. And, you know, he figures things out, but, you know, Berkeley is where they built the quantum computers. They said that they have enough computers in CERN that's equivalent to 8 billion.
Yeah, men's hearts will fail them, Barry, in some cases.
Brains.
Wow. You know, another thing I heard too, Brother Greg, was that places like Raytheon and other military contractors, they're really the ones that control all the knowledge that we have on aliens, aircraft, things like that, that the government early on chose to use the military-industrial complex so that we would have deniability. So if we're asked about, you know, what do we know? What do we know about? Why are we not disclosing UFOs and things like that? Have you heard that as well?
Well, you got the MIC, the Military Industrial Complex, and then you have the MIEC, the Military Industrial Extraterrestrial Complex. So there's two military complexes, and yes, I did hear that. I have heard that. And, you know, a lot of the hearsay, you know, a lot of people say, oh, that's just all hearsay. Well, you start to believe it when you see that a lot of the stuff they tell you when you work at a place like that is true. You know, everybody thinks they're lying to us. I don't think they're lying to us. I think they're just not saying anything.
Right. Because from what I hear, it's almost like global domination. You know, each country wants to be able to have the edge. And then I've always heard too that these entities, these demonic entities, they like to give each nation a little bit to kind of keep them from all shooting each other in the foot, so to speak. You know, like for example, I got asked not long ago, you know, about Iran. They said, well, Iran has gotten this new technology from the reptilians, but we've not been able to figure out what they actually got. And you were the very one that actually knew that they had gotten the technology for the cobalt bomb.
Yeah, they have the technology for the cobalt bomb. And what it is about the cobalt bomb, my dad used to talk about it when I was a kid. And I never, I always stuck with me cobalt, cobalt, cobalt. The cobalt bomb isn't that its explosive power is so bad. It's radiation. It only takes 3 of them to radiate the entire Earth. And that's why nobody will explode it. Now, Iran, they will because they want to wipe everybody off the face of the earth. And, what kind of God does that?
Right.
Wants everybody on the earth wiped off, especially his people. He's the God of Israel. He's our God. He's our God. Our God wouldn't do that.
Exactly. Exactly,
And,
brother. That's right.
And, there's all these other gods out there. There's so many gods. And I have a friend that was Indian. He said they have over 5,000 gods.
You know, Brother Greg, I don't want to keep you super late, but I would like to go into some things here more spiritually right now regarding these issues here to help the listeners, and then we're going to come back on this subject again. But one of the things that I feel like we're entering in, we know the scripture says in 2 Thessalonians that there's going to come a great falling away before that man of sin be revealed. And I feel like that what's happening already is that we're seeing right before our eyes the very same scenario like it was before the flood. We know that these demonic fallen angels are once again involved in that, which they've been doing it for thousands of years anyways, but they're involved in the taking the daughters of God, bringing forth children from them. And at the same time, we are seeing more and more of the technology that's being revealed, and more advanced technology, no doubt, is definitely going to come in the not so distant future of them basically trying to convince humanity that they're really our true God. I know that I was brought in on a project like that one time, or not so much brought in on a project, but I was asked a couple of different biblical issues that was being presented. And I can't say it's to our government or the CIA, NSA, or if it was to part of the military extraterrestrial industrial complex. But they said that there were 2 entities. One of them claimed to be Ra, the sun god of Egypt, but he didn't come. It was his representative, which was actually what they described him to me, the way they said he looked. They said he's got a human type of head. It's almost like skin that flaps down over his nose and over his face to where he breathes underwater, but he can breathe on land. And he was supposedly representing this Ra guy. And he said they were so religious, and they claim that they're the ones that sent Jesus, they sent Muhammad, they sent Buddha, and he said they're talking about that they're coming on the earth in the not so distant future. 2026 was 1 year that I was given, and that they're going to come when man is at such a destitute time with disease and famine and war, and that they're going to offer the way back and say that they created us, we got off track, and of course these people that are believers in the government that were aware of this meeting, they were very perplexed and didn't know how to answer some of the things that these entities were saying. And at the same time, they said the one thing that they noticed that the entities had a problem with was how to deal with the cross issue. And yet at the same time, they want to make it look like that the Jewish people really weren't the ones responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, that they were going to try to twist it in another direction. So my point is, Brother Greg, we're looking at a very demonic, diabolical thing that's about to take place. with advanced technology that's going to be presented to tempt and tease mankind, kind of like this TLS movement that's going on. They call it the light system with this guy named Jason. And they're talking about, technology coming forth but they belittle Jesus from what I hear. I haven't heard that part personally, but they make it look like he was just an ordinary guy that came along and, but they're talking about healing beds and stuff like that. And Brother Greg, I feel that the people are about to be deceived like they've never been deceived before. And I'm afraid many people are going to be duped by it if they're not spiritually prepared. And not only that, you know yourself, Brother Greg, some of the capabilities that these entities have. I think about how the scripture says, Jesus talked about the sword of the Spirit. And
the word of God.
Yes. And, and oddly enough, I've even heard that, soldiers that have been in battles with these entities before, that the one thing that would work for them was an actual sword, a knife. They said that for some reason, if they go interdimensional, bullets don't phase them at all. But a sword would give them a little bit of an edge. Of course, I was always told, who wants to fight one of these things that is like 7 to 9 foot tall anyway?
Once they're in this dimension, you can kill them.
Yes.
That's how much time you've got before they switch over into another dimension. Then you can.
Right.
And
that's what I heard.
Copper bullets work too.
Okay.
It's got to be, can't be copper jacket. It has to be solid copper. And
Wow.
I just wonder, I don't know, but I just wonder if some of the swords back in the day of Jesus weren't made out of copper.
Interesting.
I know that they had the guys that, what do you call them guys? Blacksmiths.
Yes.
That did steel work, but copper was more available than iron back then. And if you look at some of the pictures of, depictions and stuff that they're always wearing copper vests and copper this, because copper is the only thing that'll save you. And when David and Goliath got into it, and David sunk that into his head, you know why God had him cut his head off, don't you?
No.
Because they regenerate if you don't, because they're still angels.
Wow.
They can regenerate. So he had him cut. That's why he had him cut off his head and hold it up. He ain't coming back. You know what I'm saying?
Wow, brother. You go ahead. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute before we close. But go ahead. Continue on.
So there's a lot to that. But the reason the world's in the turmoil that it's in now is because the lack of Jesus. Nobody's casting out demons because
that's right.
Basically, probably about everybody's got one. I'm sure that we all have one hanging on and beating on us. I know I do. I'm not saying demon possessed, but demon oppressed. They're oppressive.
Yes, a lot of people are suffering like that, Brother Greg. I agree with that.
They don't have to kill you when they can make you kill yourself. And so they, but people quit casting out demons. They quit giving God the credit. He's the one who gave us the bread from the earth and made us from the dust of the earth. He's the one that when the Pharisees was there and called him blasphemous because he was against the law of Moses, he's the one that stood up and said, I am the law of Moses. And so, they don't care for the widows anymore. We don't care for our soldiers anymore. We don't care about people anymore. You can wake up in the morning and decide to be a girl if you want to be, and they have to recognize it. Homosexuality is at an all-time high and growing. They're more worried about offending the LGBTQ plus now community. And they also, with child molesters, are trying to protect them. So it's just, that's why the world is the way it is. Yes. Instead of complaining about Biden, pray for him. Instead of complaining about him, pray for him.
That's right.
He's just a pawn in a game of demonic war. He's a pawn on a Ouija board. That's all he is. Yes. He's a planchette. And if you put your fingers on it and believe in him, that's not going to get you nothing. You need to put your hands on the Bible and read it and believe in that, and it'll get you everything. It costs nothing to be born again, but it costs everything to be a Christian.
That's right. That's so true. You know, I think about where Paul said, you know, that we've got to have the armor of God on. You know, you got to have the shield of faith, the breastplate of righteousness, you know, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, you know, your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. That's right. Yeah. And it's so true because, you know, brother, you know, whether or not we know what, I'll say this. I have always felt like when Paul said these things here, because as you quoted to me before we came on the air, you were quoting that scripture there, you know, that, you know, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness and powers and principalities in high places, right? And, you know, we are the people, I'm afraid, Brother Greg, do not realize this is not just some passive situation that's about to happen. You're about to see when they open up these portals using these hadron colliders, you're going to see another world that you never knew existed. And you really need to know Jesus Christ, not just because you borrowed his name for a little while to say you're a Christian. You need to make sure that you have really become one with him. That you know, if it's not rude to say, but you have been in the bridal chamber and you have become one together in such a place in Jesus Christ to where nothing can come against you. You know, I mean, I was thinking about today when they did this this emergency broadcasting test, and I meant to do a video on this before they did it. I just did not get it done before then, but I thought about Psalm 91. Where no weapon that can be formed can be used against us. And of course, the whole chapter goes into all of this. You know, but there again, if people are not truly anchored in Christ, they're going to be defeated. And I'm going to come back. I was telling you, I wanted to mention this earlier because you mentioned about the cutting off of the head of Goliath, and I did not know that. Oh, yeah. But yeah, years ago, I don't know, Brother Greg, I was probably 20 in my mid-20s, I had this dream, and in the dream, this giant serpent, I mean giant, big enough like you're riding like a horse, he comes, he flies through the air to attack me, and I had this dagger, like a short sword, not I call it a dagger, not a sword, but maybe about a 18-inch blade on it, and I struck this serpent in the side of its head and wounded it, and then it ran off through the air. And I heard the Lord speak to me audibly, and he said, be ready, because when he comes back, he will come more vicious than he was before. And sure enough, he came back the second time, Brother Greg, and I mounted this serpent like I was riding a horse, literally as big as a horse in its diameter. And as I did, the Lord spoke to me and said, you must cut his head off to kill him. And I was whacking away, cutting off the head of that serpent, and then I came out of the dream. And I'm like, what in the world does that mean?
That's why you got to cut their heads off when these giants come up from the earth, and we'll probably have to do a giant on another time. But when the giants come up from the earth and you kill one, you better be ready to cut its head off. But the best thing to do is stay out of its way. And you remember the old fable, thieves like so much smell the blood of an Englishman. Yes. They can smell the blood of a Christian.
Wow.
They don't smell the blood of regular men. They smell the blood of Christians. They're the ones that want to be eliminated first. And God said that I will use the giants to fulfill my wrath. And so, you know, you can't imagine what it would be like being eaten. It'd be like, you know, Jaws, be like a shark getting it. And I know that the ones that I seen were in a form that wasn't too scary, you know, because we had to deal with them and they had to deal with us, and they didn't want us too scared, you know. So, but I believe that that was all a facade, that behind the mask was a ferocious looking monster. And somewhere, and I tried to look for it today. I'm going to have to look for it again. Somewhere in the Bible it says, and in those days, the mothers will give birth to monsters.
Wow.
It's in the Bible.
Help me find that one. I got to see that myself as well. Brother Greg.
Yeah, I learned that from Steve Quayle.
Can you describe what a reptilian looks like?
Like an alligator with legs and arms.
I heard that they had a head similar to that of what a lizard's head would look like. Is that true?
Yeah, some of them do. They're different kinds. As a matter of fact, you know what? I watched a movie last night called Cryptid. And it was about halfway through it, you don't know what's killing all these people. And then they call this guy at a museum that knew what he was talking about. He knew ancient language. He says, you're dealing with reptilians that are coming up from the ground.
Wow.
And they were killing everybody, horses and people. And they were just, it was really a good movie. I was like, wow. And I want you to know, have you heard of the series, The Chosen?
Yes.
I've been watching it. I'm up to season 3 now. The season 4 is coming out. And they even say that in they got a big thing that comes out there and says, we have not done any changes to what the Bible says. This movie is depicted as accurate as we could get it to the Holy Bible.
Yeah, I actually started looking at that myself when it first came out a couple of weeks ago. Then I've been studying a lot lately, so I haven't seen it in about a week. But that is it's nice to see something good versus all the other stuff that's out there. So yes, I like that as well.
Well, I'm all the way to where Jesus met the girl at the well, and told her everything she ever did.
That's one of my favorite stories of all in the Bible.
Oh yeah, wait till you see it, man, and make you cry your eyes out.
Amen. 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 Brother Greg, I don't want to hold you any longer. I want to really thank you though for coming on with us here tonight, and I want to encourage you.
You never actually said the name of the movie.
Cryptid.
It was Cryptid, apparently.
Those of you that are listening tonight,
watching Cryptid.
Can't stress enough to really be in prayer right now, asking the Father what you need to do, and believe, just really believe Jesus Christ is the only answer. He's the only way.
Amen.
He's the only way out.
That's right. And listen, many of you that are listening tonight probably will not be even Christians. I mean, there are many people here that listen to this broadcast from all over the world, every different walk of life. And I can't encourage you enough if you don't know Jesus Christ as your Savior, please, and listen, maybe I don't have to, look, you may have a different background. You could be Hindu, you could be Muslim, you could be just atheist. I don't know. But look, go listen. God's obligated. If you would sincerely go before him and ask, I don't care what your religious belief is right now, just ask him from your heart. If Jesus Christ truly is the Son of God.
Okay, guys, we've got 20 minutes till Mike shows up. So I've loaded something that goes for about 20 minutes.
Seen this occur, and every time it's on Netflix, folks. Every time. Of course, let me remind you, they're building for you and I, folks. This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. There's another movie that came out, folks, on Netflix, and this movie, of course, just happened to coincide with something that happened that exactly matches the storyline of the movie. This is the third time in about 3 or 4 years we've seen this occur. And every time it's on Netflix, folks. Every time. Of course, let me remind you about the last time that happened. The last time had to do with a train, of course, going off the rails in a certain particular state called Ohio. You might have remembered that whole thing, and you might have remembered the movie that released right around the exact same time that happened. about the exact same topic in the exact same state. Might have remembered that, right? And there was one back in 2020 as well. I'm not going to mention that one. I think you might be able to predict what that one was. And of course, now we have a new one. And this was something that I've been talking about. I talked about it even a year ago. And lo and behold, it looks like I might have actually been right, folks. And I'll get into that as we get farther in this video, but it has to do with cyber, of course, hacking and things like that. I talked about a certain country having some of their finest over in Canada, just across from Tacoma, Washington. And it was just so weird how some power, of course, stations just had some cyber issues back in, like, I think it was January this year. And I was like, you know what? Maybe we should keep an eye on CHINA. You know, what country? China. We should keep an eye on them. And guess what's happening, folks? Yes, it is.
I'm going to say that's on Netflix.
It's happening from there. And we didn't see it coming. So I'm going to get into that, actually, and a ton of other things in this video, folks. And there's a movie that just released talking about the exact same thing. And actually, it leads into a world. WAR, folks. So we're going to get into this and actually much more as we get into this video. And of course, you might be wondering to yourself, why can't I afford anything these days? It might have something to do with the fact that they printed almost half the USD back in 2020. That might have something to do with it. Of course, you and I didn't get that half of the money being printed. I think if we did, we'd probably get like $100,000 checks. I'm pretty sure it'd be something really ridiculous like that. But of course, we didn't get that, did we? No, we didn't. So obviously, if we only got a few $1,000 checks from the stimulus payments, someone must have got those hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it wasn't you and I, and now we're paying for it with inflation. That's why you can't afford anything. And this, of course, ties into this whole cyber thing. How does it tie in, folks? Well, you remember that bald guy from the World, Economic, of course, Forum. What is called Dr. Evil. You know that movie, Austin Powers with Dr. Evil? He kind of looks like him a little bit. Yeah. So it's Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. He told us these things. He said in a James Bond villain voice, you will own, of course, nothing. And at the same time, be happy, folks. You remember that? That's why you can't afford anything, folks. They printed all that money and gave it to themselves. And you and I are paying the bill for it. Now, the next thing is, of course, he said about a year ago, actually it was around the time of those power stations in Washington had issues. He said there'll be cyber, of course, hacking and stuff like that. And this will be bigger than 2020. You might remember that. I can't do his voice. He's got a really messed up voice. So just pretend I'm making a villain voice there. Yes, so indeed, Dr. Evil here strikes again, folks, from Austin Powers. And this is why Americans are going hungry. I mean, literally. And
create joy that lasts a lifetime.
He was having a really quiet.
And actually, in reality, believe it or not, you're not even going to believe this, folks. Let me show you this. Almost 40%, almost 40% of Americans say they've missed a meal just to pay for their housing payment. That's where we're at, folks. You see that? That's interesting, isn't it? I'd say that's pretty interesting. So, of course, you can think Dr. Evil for that, folks. Anyway, pardon my sarcasm. You can either laugh or you can cry. So I prefer to laugh and just have fun laughing at this stuff, folks, because I don't think it's going to succeed anyways. It may look like it's succeeding, but actually they've already lost in many respects. They've admitted it even 2 years ago. And where they lost is with this WAR in Europe. That was supposed to unseat a certain leader, and it hasn't worked. And that was the entire point of it. They were trying to get rid of a certain person over there. We'll call him the Ruslan leader. I think you know what I'm talking about. Starts with the letter R, a certain country. Yes, indeed. They were trying to unseat that guy so they could regain their overall economic power over the world, because they lost it. They lost it 2 years ago. That's why you have two separate large economies now, East and West, And so they aren't winning. They're still going ahead with their plans, but they're not winning. They're losing in many respects, but they're once again going forward. And we have this movie that came out. It's got Ethan Hawke, Julia Roberts in it. And it was made, or no, it had extensive notes, extensive storyline notes from a former, of course, president. I'll let you guess who it is. Let's just say he's African American, so it'd be pretty easy for you to guess who it is. Yeah. At any rate, he had extensive notes, wanted them to make sure to have all the details from his notes in the movie. I wonder why. But they have this new movie, Ethan Hawke, Julian Roberts. They get they go on vacation to some getaway, some nice, I don't know if it's tropical, just some nice vacation spot at a villa somewhere. And of course, it was double booked. And there was another family there, African American family, of course. I think this guy and maybe this lady, this gal. So it's these two booked over at this villa, and somehow it got double booked, and these guys were there as well, and they're sharing this villa. Just kind of weird, like, what happened? Why did we get double booked, right? And then, of course, as they're there, all of a sudden the power, of course, goes out. And all of a sudden they're watching CNN News, and it says, "Oh, look, all across America, no power," right? That's what it says. And let's see, and then they're all surprised when they're watching it. I think I have a picture of how they looked when they were watching it. Where did that go? No, that's actually a different screen. Oh yeah, here we go. So they're actually watching, like, whoa, what's going on here? Yeah. So that.
Yeah, I don't think I'll watch that, Di. Not my cup of tea.
That's apparently the theme of the movie, and of course in the movie, then the two families are fighting, and from what I understand, I haven't watched it, and then of course it gets worse, and it turns into
it's clearing up, guys.
A world, WA, folks. So this is kind of where they want to take it, and that's just so that these people at the top get scared. That's pretty much what it's all about, it seems like. And so, like I said, I'm going to get into that stuff. I'm going to get into a number of things. I think
the Australian government doesn't want you to have this drone. This $99 intelligent drone is disrupting the entire photography industry, and big brands are trying their hardest to make it illegal in Australia. Instead of spending $2,000 to $5,000 on professional photography gear, this $99 smart
things I didn't get into in the other video. First of all, I got to mention food supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description for this, folks. 4 weeks worth on sale for $177. It was $195, I believe, before this, if I remember correctly. Link is in the description for that. Definitely on sale. Also, you got 3 months worth. Go get that if you want as well. We also have the giveaway going on. Link below. If you haven't joined, probably your last chance to join, folks. Get over there. Just pause the video. It'll take you about 20 seconds. Autofill your name and email, click a few buttons, you're set. And you'll get there just in time, and then I'll try to get it out before Christmas to whoever's the winners. There'll be 3 different winners. The link is in the description for that. Of course, also this book here, The Lost Ways, How Your Great-Great-Grandfather Lived Without Electricity, Had to Build a Cellar, How to Do Things Around the House Like They Did in the Old Days. Considering the wonderful things they're talking about in this movie on Netflix with Julia Roberts and Ethan Hawke, you might want to get that book just in case. Get the printed version, because it ain't going to do you any good if there's no power. Get the printed version. Link is in the description. And when you go to click the printed link, it will say something like about it being digital, but then it'll have shipping. It's actually the digital. It's not. It's the digital and printed version. It'll be both. Because it actually has.
Okay, guys, I might go to Paul now. Yeah. And there we go.
About 6 inches of rain or more and 40 to 50 mile-an-hour winds. It's expected to hit Saturday morning at around Saturday night at 7 p.m. and would end around Sunday morning, 7 a.m. for Florida. So we're praying about that. We're giving a heads up to anybody about that. And also there was a Delta airline flight leaving Amsterdam headed for Detroit that had to make an emergency landing in Newfoundland, Canada, there in Goose Bay on a military base in Canada, where all 270 passengers had to be deplaned and put in the military barracks and spend the night in a very chilly, they said chilly barracks, while the plane was being repaired or worked on. It was a very strange story. A lot of people are wondering what that was really all about. And also, what about CERN? What can we learn from CERN? Is there any news on it? Is there anything we need to know? All of this is happening, and questions we have for Mike from around the world tonight. It's going to be a very interesting conversation tonight, no doubt about it. I want to welcome all 6,000 of you that are joining us live. And, you know, anytime you have these situations like this China situation, you know, wow. Now, you're not going to find that in your mainstream fake news media, even if this information is absolutely dead on. I don't think you're going to hear this. But then again, I could be wrong. Sometimes our sources find things out, they let us know, and 2 and 3 days later, it's finally revealed to the public. Maybe it's because too many people have heard about it and are asking questions. Or maybe it's in the current administration's best interest to go ahead and share the information, to let people know. Maybe they want to use that as leverage against their adversaries, okay? Just like the balloon. I mean, you remember the Chinese balloon flying over top? I mean, we probably would have never heard about it except a photographer saw it over Montana. And then all of a sudden, you know, the government, U.S. government finally had to confirm, yeah, that's the Chinese spy balloon. Yeah, yep. Would they have told us? Probably not. So this is the information. Mike from the World's going to call any moment, folks. We're ready for him when he does. It is going to be a very interesting evening. He called this solar flare, massive, largest solar flare in 6 years, an X-class 2.8. Basically, Mike around the world predicted this 2 weeks ago. He didn't say it like that. He just said the sun is going to do some explosive things, and it's due to planet X, or he said, due to the binary system. So we are going to keep our eyes wide open on this. And speaking of Mike from the world, joining us from somewhere, located somewhere around the world, it's Mike from around the world.
God bless you, Pastor Paul. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Mike. It's great to have you tonight. Great to have you. Okay, Mike, you said it 2 weeks ago that we would be talking about the sun, and at noon today, X-class 2.8, massive solar flare, the largest in 6 years. Mike, is that Planet X? Is things going to get worse?
Yeah, unfortunately. I was about 2 days off, though. That was the date for today's activity was actually marked December 12th. Next episode, December 17th and 18th. And, of course, December 23rd, December 25th, or 26th, January 4th, and January 11th, January 21st, or 27th. I guess the real question is, right? How can anybody know what the sun is doing?
That's what I want to know. How in the world can you sit there and give me dates like that? So how do you know what the sun is doing before it happens? What's causing that?
We have an external influence. We do. We really do. And that external influence is not going anywhere. It's going to cause more and more issues with how the Earth operates. And everything will begin to convey that.
So, Mike, when you say the external influence, and you know, I keep hollering, you know, Planet X, people's holler Nibiru, Dwarf Star, you know, Planet Number 9. The media has changed its name so many times, or the binary system. So this influence, this huge influence, that's even though it might be billions of miles away, and it's got a bunch of moons, maybe 5, maybe 7, I don't know, maybe more. But how can it be certain times that is there certain pulses, like pulsations coming from it? that we know about the time they're going to hit the sun?
In fact, it's exactly like some of the experiments happening at CERN. It's just like electronics, based on physics. Of course, celestial mechanics should be on the balloon numbers in a lot of cases, but it is in a sense, anybody who works with electronics can get a good handle on what's happening. Our sun, whenever it sends out a solar flare, right, it's actually, every time it does this, it will strike the heliosphere at the exact spot of its weakness. Well, that same thing happens within a capacitor. That same thing happens in a circuit. And so you're looking at perfect balance, right? And so with external influences, you're going to have a weakening of the greater magnetic ball around this solar system, right? And it's going to begin to pull in a specific direction. The solar flares of the sun will become more and more precise as far as a general location they're going to cover. And of course, in that power or energy exchange will begin to take place, the photonic exchange. That will become more prominent. People will begin to, it's going to affect many things on Earth, many things. And CERN is that, they're working at breakneck pace to mitigate certain things because they know what's happening. They know the history. They know what all the archaeologists have dug up. They know these things. And so they're going to do everything they can do to mitigate certain things we're going to face.
So you bring in CERN, which is great because that's one of the questions. Matter of fact, tonight here in North Carolina, we had 19 people that gathered with us for a wonderful meal at the Cracker Barrel. And I asked them all, I said, if you had a chance to ask right now, Mike around the world a question, tell me now. Well, it kind of stunned them all. There was only 2 or 3, I think, that actually could come up with a question on the spot. But they all said when they watched, they wish I would ask certain questions. Well, one of them said, is there anything going on at CERN? So you bring CERN up now. Are you saying that CERN, they're purposely weakening our magnetosphere, even though they know, but they know about this binary system, though, right?
Right. They know about that. So what are they going to try and do to save themselves, right? Everything they're doing right now is trying to save themselves.
Are you serious?
Just keep that mindset,
okay.
And you're going to see many things will begin to make sense, and they will take away from the general populace or do whatever they have to do to save themselves. For example, oversight. You don't have a lot of oversight with CERN, right?
No.
Why? Because it's exploratory science, right, in the quantum area. So who's going to come up there? What civilian is going to say, hey, you can't do that because of this? Right? There are no determinate factors or consequences people can name that are scientifically based improvement that people will face. And so there's little to no oversight, right? They're going to continue to do this. That's just like some of the chambers they were building. They needed to know the precise happenings of our atmosphere. And so they replicated, you could say, the atmospheres of Earth in a chamber. And this was a mandate. They had to know what would absolutely take place, how long certain processes would take. I mean, they have it down to a science. Why? Because they know what's coming. Passport, we discussed this. What about 10 years ago, I think it was, and about, or somewhere along those lines, concerning CERN and what they were trying to do and how they had to know about the atmosphere because conditions of the Earth are changing. Right now, for example, do you know that a severe drought has struck? They're not telling the numbers. These meteorologists who work are given, they have certain things they cannot discuss. They can't talk about them. And right now, the water levels are disappearing all over the place, although we have, rain and snow. But the water levels are leaving, and salt water is starting to take its toll, right? Starting to come in where other water did exist. It's going to be real bad this summer. extremely bad this summer, right? So people are going to have water problems. Do you think they're going to talk about that to anybody? No, right?
No.
I wouldn't be surprised about 5 years ago. Now, this is just my observation. Normally, when the Lord impresses things upon people, it's always about 5 years before something happens. And I can almost guarantee 5 years ago, people were wondering and having dreams and intuitions about water, something with the water, and that they were pressed to make sure that they had water, right? And I know it's just that because we're running into a time now where water is going to become one of those commodities that are highly regulated, right?
Right.
And the something's going to happen to the water. That is bound. Something's going to happen to the water. We live in a society of terrorists right all over the place, but there are different types of terrorists, right? Something's going to happen to the basic things that we utilize, unfortunately, right? It's just naive to think that nothing is going to happen. Not like that. It will, and people are going to have to face that. Now, hopefully, everybody did their homework according to what the Lord gave them an unction towards concerning water, so that they can continue to get water even in troubled times.
You know, when you bring up the water and the saltwater intrusion, you know, these are things you have talked about probably for about 10 years. We did a webinar where you actually showed us a map of what the Earth, what America could kind of look like. And that's a map that went back all the way into the Navy in the 1960s, but it's been altered some to when you brought out a really good one. You've talked about intrusion. You've talked about, you know, the binary system, the volatility of the sun. We've talked about droughts that are going to be unbelievable. Yet we're going to have massive flooded rains and rain bombs. And so is all of these things, and you know, there are biblical scripture that backs it, but are all of these things, there's no way to stop them, is what I'm hearing. There's no way to really stop it.
You know, it's part of a process we're going to have to undergo. And that's just the beginning portions of it. The rest is, you know, a complete, you imagine humidity all over the planet at about 10%.
That's right? Crazy.
But we also live in a time where all these mysteries, they're not going to be mysteries, Pastor Paul. They're not. All these like UFO topics, aliens, secret machines, and this, that, and the other, all that's coming out into the open. They're not going to care to show anybody this stuff because everybody's mindset is changing, right?
Right.
And, you know, I have to put some of this on Sir and I do because they're tampering with what people would call dimensions, right? Now, God put things in perfect balance. Anybody who studies physics or electronics, they're on the engineering side, they understand that everything is in perfect balance, right? If you go pull something out of a demonic realm, then something else is going to have to fill that void. You can't empty out anything about balanced. And if anything comes out of this realm, going into that demonic realm, something is coming back to this realm. Every time they run these experiments, kind of like that PowerPoint that I gave you a long time ago, it will begin to change human behavior. And what have we seen since that time?
People running amok.
It's been a time darkness spreading in the minds of so many people. It's almost people are they are nuts. People are nuts, and they can't see. They cannot see that they're not sober. Right? They can't see that. So it's a dark influence in the earth right now. It's about to get a lot worse because this inbound thing, this binary star, is not coming by itself. And we're not talking about forces of physics, right? Simple little language when people discuss spiritual things. But a lot of novices have tried to look into it, become experts, but they haven't come from that side of existence, right? And so a lot of people think they know about the spiritual realm and this, that, and the other, but in the quantum area, you start to learn a lot about this other realm, these what they call dimensions. I would call it part of the bubble, and I reference the bubble because something is wrapped around this planet. Right.
Right.
That is very difficult for let's just say it's a spiritual bubble. And it's almost like we're surrounded by demonic entities and evil influence all around us. And outside of that, who knows what that is, but we certainly have a dimension that they're pulling things from. We're talking about energy that could fit a sugar cube, right? That could power a city. This is what they're pulling out.
That's crazy. I know you brought that up before. I mean,
yeah. Well, reports are going to come out now that one of the major things is anti-gravity.
Yeah,
That's coming out. The reports are coming out. The proof of concept is coming out. The prototype machines are going to be shown. We're talking about real anti-gravity, right? Not magnetism, not that stuff. But what they're really tampering with, Pascal, is utilizing all this material that's wrapped around us. They found out how to reorder it, right? Let's just put it that way. So in essence, when you live every day of your life, we see fish swim. We're doing the same thing, right? We just don't recognize the fluid around us.
Okay.
We've learned how to utilize that fluid.
Okay.
Right.
So I see the concept. I see it. So
yeah, they've learned how to utilize it, and this fluid is everywhere. But
is it plasma? Now, are you talking dark matter, or are you talking plasma?
This is more in line with I wouldn't call it dark matter. I know they called it that at one point. Well, I guess for the sake of conversation,
antimatter.
You could call it dark matter, or let's just say matter that's in the spiritual realm.
Okay.
Right. So that spiritual realm means realm we can't see.
Right.
So these guys are tampering with some real. I think that people at the Pentagon call it voodoo. That's what they call it, voodoo.
They call it voodoo. What?
Yeah, they call it voodoo at the Pentagon.
And what is it? Because it's something they can't deal with, or is it because it's scary to them, or spooky, or what?
Oh yeah, it's spooky. It is spooky, and that's one of the descriptive words in that too, right? But they call it voodoo stuff. Is what they call it.
Okay.
But because you can't really explain it, with the things that we're used to. So they're utilizing this. This is why this UFO stuff is coming out. Well, one reason why. But they're not going to hide this stuff because they're going to start utilizing it. Why? Because the Earth is changing very fast. Right? It's changing fast. And I think that as things begin to progress, you're going to see people make power plays, right? You're going to see folks, countries make power plays. It seems like no country respects other countries in this day and age. Why? Because those governments know, they know things they haven't discussed with everybody, right? They can't release, for example, they can't release certain classified things in one country and not expect everybody else to know it because we have the internet.
Right.
So it has to be a international co-op type release. And believe me, that's coming.
All right.
And when it comes, we're going to be under, let's just say under a new type of lifestyle for everybody, because these things will be exposed. And when you take something out of the realm of fantasy and you tell someone it's real, your brain's not going to want to believe it, number one. You could see things right before your eyes, and your brain would still not believe it, right? But when you see it every day, that's when it sinks in. You're going to have to deal with things. People are going to have to deal with things they normally wouldn't deal with. And during this time, Pascal, this is why all the financial systems and everything else, they're set up to change. Because they know this time of duress is coming.
Yeah.
And they're doing everything they can do, though, to save themselves from that ultimate time. They know it's right around the corner.
So
they know it's around the corner.
They know, and and folks, by the way, when you talk about this, they're trying to save themselves from what they know is coming because they can see it. They've got deep space probes. I mean, they got this thing. They've got it figured out. The Bible told us that this exact same thing that they see coming is going to happen. So a reason, you're saying that's a reason for a new world order, for a one world government, for a new banking system, a new digital economic system, a higher class, a ruling class, and then a slave class, a mentality, all of it to gather resources. Let me ask you a question, because we got today one of our sources, it's an insider who's been right every time. So it's unbelievable. This individual sent us a info today to say, hey, look, you need to know and you can run it by Mike. China attacked an abandoned U.S. base in Alaska. They thought the base was abandoned. Apparently, we have troops there hidden underground or whatever. And so they're involved in a shots fired, an altercation between Chinese and American troops in an abandoned military outpost or base in Alaska. Is there anything, Mike, that you can say about that or anything that you know?
Well, gosh, there's been a lot of incursions lately.
Okay.
A lot. And
He always mucks around the audio. Now I've got to turn it up more.
it's only a matter of time before certain hostilities beyond political speech and talk kind of spill over into the public's eye. Now with this, if that incident is real, because I can't say anything about that.
All right, I get you. Right.
Because something like that would, that would be used for leverage. That would be used for propaganda. That would be used for a million things. So, but keep in mind those things, just like that, they happen more often than anyone knows. And this is just in the last year. It's been happening like that.
Okay.
More than anybody knows.
Okay.
And what I'm saying is, you could be in a town. For example, you could be in a town, and possibly you notice a police chase with armored vehicles you never saw before, but you'll never pay attention to who they're chasing.
Right.
Those things have happened already. Everybody knows those balloons came right over the USA.
Exactly.
Everybody knows that. So even before, why did they didn't send those balloons? Because somehow their GPS was messed up. That's a GPS guided system.
Right. Right.
That's a GPS guide. That was part of something else.
Well, let me ask you, but before you say it, and real quick, and that is, would they have ever told us about it had this photographer in Montana hadn't spotted it? They never told us, would they?
Well, there would have been, what, 12 more.
Oh, see?
12 more.
12 more. So if some, as you said, the internet, if some of us out here hear something, see something, spot something, they may have to tell us something that they weren't going to, just like this confrontation in Alaska. They may in the next 2-3 days have to say something, since I'm talking about it tonight.
Yeah, they will have to, because once the people find out about things, right, they're going to start to press the government for some type of answer, especially if it's military. And so they normally stay out ahead of it. So don't be shocked if they come out and say, something is all lies, right? Sadly enough, the majority of people still believe in mainstream media. And so they will get out ahead of it or call it something else quickly, or who knows, if they're angry at China enough, they may come out with the part of the truth. I doubt if they'll come out with the whole truth.
Yeah. Okay.
But those things, fastball, they're happening more often now.
Okay.
They're not. And I'm talking about the USA, and China, and the Koreas, right? The Koreas. The Koreas. And Australia has a bit of an issue too. And so does Indonesia, the Philippines. So
okay, are they having
Indonesia?
Okay, that sounds like all of those people are having a problem with China, though. That's from what I understand.
It's a reordering.
It's a what?
Reordering is going to take place. Everything is going to be reordered, right? There are alliances linking up right now, right?
Yeah.
Now they only needed some sort of a trigger, some common cause to get behind to solidify some of these alliances, and that happens to be Israel.
Oh, let's talk about Israel just for a minute, okay? I mean, we got two things. The UN just had a big vote. Thank God the Security Council voted one veto by the United States, but the General Assembly went ahead and voted anyway. It's non-binding, and they voted 153 to 17, with 26 abstaining, to forcibly demand and stop
Australia signed that to our eternal disgrace.
Gaza ceasefire. And then a Turkish lawmaker stood up in front of the Turkish parliament and criticized and cursed Israel, and then finally made the statement, his last words of his life, Israel will suffer the wrath of Allah. He then instantly fell over and died of a heart attack. He died today. He had it, this happened the day before. So what's going on here with the UN? Is there pressure building against Israel, even besides not just the UN, but I mean, is it coming from everywhere now?
The entire world right now, right, is highly sympathetic to Gazan people, right?
Right.
Palestinians, they're highly sensitive. So they are in the process of forcing Israel. They always make known their position first, publicly, right? Now, people are going to talk about that. Is what will happen. Based on the feedback of those conversations, they will go forward. Even the American administration will change its views if the people are in support of Israel being stopped by force, right? So we all know what's happening. There are more people out there who, it's not that they've taken a strange stance because of prosecution of people who were outspoken against Israel, right? Kind of stopped a lot of people from speaking their minds. But we all know that people they're tired of, they call it senseless fighting. And when they have these stories where they show Israel, utilizing phosphorus, or Israel stripping soldiers, this, that, and the other,
Yeah.
they see those as, grievous hostilities, and they're not going to go for that. And so they made this public. In a couple of days, they're going to reconvene and have more talks about this. Pastor, they will disarm Israel.
Yes, I
They
heard
will
you.
ultimately disarm Israel. And it's not going to take a long time either.
No.
It may seem like that right now, but it will not take a long time. And when this happens, that's when the USA is we're going to have to be on severe watch. Because if we take a position with the world, we're going to seem weak, right?
Yes.
We're already vetoed the UN, but that's not going to work because you have NATO, heads of NATO, saying that Israel has to stop, right?
Right.
So we know in the Bible that God will plead with everybody down there, right?
Yes.
There's a part of the Bible where it says God pleads.
Yes.
With fire, brimstone, right?
Yes.
With great hail. That's how he pleads.
Yes.
And so, in a situation like that, where's BP Earthwatch and Gil Broussard? Because this is starting to overlap. And these things are starting to overlap. And there's a very real threat coming our way. And we're not going to miss it. And it's not going to destroy the earth. No. But it's going to cause some conditions nobody is used to, right? Nobody. We're talking a meteor storm is most certainly coming. And here's something new. Not only is one meteor storm coming, but another one is coming right behind that one. So the secondary storm is about what they say about a 5-year gap in between these storms, right? So who knows who's going to make it through this second storm?
A couple things you said. We're going to need to hear what BP Earthwatch and a guy like Gil Broussard have to say. You just actually, in my spirit, just jumped and you said it. Probably I need to have a webinar, maybe a small BP Earthwatch, Gil Broussard, a couple more, just the top 5 or so, to really bear into this binary system situation with the sun and the effects on this planet and the sun. I think I better do it. I mean, you're throwing dates at me right here that's serious. So we're in a danger zone. Now let's talk about these meteorites, because it's 2025. I mean, we're going to have this meteor storm. We're already seeing more and more asteroids going by. So what happens when we get in? When is this going to happen? Is this 2024, 2025, 26? What do you see?
There's no, we're looking at you're actually looking at a situation past where dates are not going to do people any good. Here's what's going to happen.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
We're going to have some some example incursions that tear up some stuff, right? I wouldn't say a large loss of life, but there will be a loss of life. And from that point on, people are going to want answers. But here's what's going to happen. As soon as the first set or the first cluster reaches the atmosphere and actually makes landfall and fall in the ocean and land, you're going to have a billion experts out there who never discussed this topic. They're going to hop on every media platform and confuse the people.
Oh, wow.
Now, here's what it means. The source, because nobody's discussing this, right? They're going to jump in there and take the lead, and everybody's going to listen to them. But that's where they're going to make their mistake. And so anybody who can cover the subject now, not to so much speak about the theoretical sides of things, but to get people ready for the reality, right, of living in a time where this has actually happened. Because we've talked about that. A lot of people are well informed about many different scenarios, right? But what about when it actually impacts? Then what?
Right.
Then what does a person do? What does a person do for their family in an environment where if you have hit and the atmosphere is changed, it hits a couple chemical plants, you have fires that won't go out, right? Sea levels start to alter, swish and squash, and all this, that, and the other. So people need to know this. Certain things are already prepared for that, and we're just talking about some impacts, right? Because I'll say it again, the first examples are coming. They're coming, right?
And so
we know they're going to cause volcanism. We know they're going to cause fires. This summer, we're going to deal with a lot of fires, things of that nature, right? So are the people...
We're already getting bad fires this summer. We're already getting them.
Well informed of how to still function. A world that's not going to end because a few of those hit, but it's going to scare people. It's going to change how they view the world. It's going to make some people uncomfortable, right? Then what? Do they have enough?
It's absolutely disgusting, isn't it, Diane? That he charges people. It's absolutely terrible.
Spiritual strength to stay rooted, to actually be of help to somebody else.
He's no different to Kevin Copeland, in my opinion.
Ready to face whatever it takes or whatever comes and still maintain their status, their state of faith in Christ? Or will they just fall apart, start listening to everybody else and be maneuvered into this new utopia everybody is starting to set up?
Wow. I mean, you're right. And so we have this a total shift of everything because of survival, because of the elitist group or the ruling class is trying to come up with a way to survive the apocalypse. They know it's coming. They can scientifically see it. We can spiritually see it. But they don't understand the source behind it all. Am I right? I mean, Christ,
right. That's right. They have physical details, right? Things that'll happen physically. I mean, they paid all the archaeologists to dig up all this stuff. They're the ones that determine what people can read and what they can't read, right? They're responsible for what is distributed around the world and what is not. But again, when the first examples hit this earth, then what?
Right.
Then we're in a new area there, and we know that people will. A lot of people will say, "Well, I need to go hear an expert in this." Sadly enough, that's when.
Okay, that's not me. That's Sam. That's not me. That's them, I think. Okay, he's out. He's using a live. What a ripoff. Yeah, this looks like it's over, guys. and it's 10 to 3, and I'm going down the Gage families tonight because we're having a Christmas thing at the beach over the weekend. So I won't be streaming for a couple of days. Okay, guys, I'm out. God bless.